Owen Maddox was holding a bag of frozen peas to his jaw and trying not to cry in the checkout line at Carter's Market when he bumped straight into her. "Whoa, I'm so sorry," he muttered, juggling the bruised bag of groceries in one hand and his 5-year-old son, Zane, in the other. "I wasn't looking, it's okay," the woman said, steadying herself as a box of spaghetti noodles clattered to the floor between them. She bent down to pick it up before he could. "You all right?" "Yeah," he lied, though his jaw throbbed and his pride was hanging by a thread. Zane tugged his arm. "Daddy, your face looks like a balloon." "Thanks, buddy," Owen said, flashing a tired smile. She glanced at Owen again, her eyes narrowing as she took in the dark bruise forming on his jaw and the half-empty grocery cart filled with nothing but generic brand cereal, a gallon of milk, and a few dented cans. Her gaze flicked to Zane, then back to Owen. "I'm fine," he added quickly, embarrassed. "Just a bad day. Sorry again." But she didn't step away. "Do you want to cut ahead?" she asked, nodding toward the full cart in front of her. "Looks like you've got your hands full." Owen hesitated, then shook his head. "We're good. Thanks, though." The woman studied him for another beat, then gave a soft laugh and motioned to the cashier. "Put a stuff on my bill." "What?" Owen frowned. "No, you don't have to. I know I don't," she said, already sliding her platinum card across the scanner. "But I want to." "I can't let you do that." "Then consider it a favor you'll pay forward one day." Zane looked up at her. "Are you an angel?" She smiled, her chest rising a little as she crouched down to his level. "No, sweetheart. But I'll take the compliment." Owen ran a hand through his messy brown hair, overwhelmed. "I seriously can't thank you enough. I'm Owen. And this is Zane." She stood, brushing her hands off on her navy coat. "Holland. Nice to meet you both." "Thank you, Holland," Zane beamed. She winked. "You're welcome." Owen didn't even realize he was staring until she walked out of the store, heels clicking, her long brown ponytail swaying behind her like something out of a commercial. He blinked, then looked down at Zane. "Did we just get saved by a grocery line fairy?" Zane nodded solemnly. "She's magic." The next day, Holland Carrington sat in the back of a black town car with tinted windows, staring at the grocery receipt she'd crumpled in her coat pocket. $7.23. That was all his total had come to. She didn't know why she couldn't stop thinking about him. Maybe it was the bruise on his jaw, or the quiet way he held his son's hand so tightly. Maybe it was how he refused help until the end. Or maybe it was how his eyes warm, deep brown looked like they hadn't known peace in years. "Ms. Carrington," her assistant said, peeking through the divider. "Your board meeting starts in 5.
Holland nodded slowly.
Tell them to start without me." Her assistant blinked.
Nang.
"I'll be there. I just need a minute." The car pulled up to the Carrington Global building, all glass and steel and 100 floors of pressure. Holland climbed out, heels clicking against marble, but her mind was still back in that aisle of the grocery store. He had no idea who she was. No idea she ran a multinational tech firm. No idea she'd just signed a merger deal worth over $200 million yesterday. And she had no idea why that made her feel good. 3 days later, Owen was unloading boxes at the back of the hardware store where he worked part-time when Zane came racing around the corner.
"Daddy.
The nice grocery lady is here." "What?" Owen sat up, banging his head on the shelf. "Who?" "Holland. She's right outside." Owen dusted his hands off and stepped out the side door just as Holland was walking up, holding a small box and wearing casual jeans and a simple white sweater. She smiled when she saw him. "Hey."
"Ah."
"Hi," Owen said, confused. "How did you?" "I asked the cashier at Carter's. You left your name on a rewards card. Small town, remember?" He blinked. "You tracked me down?" "I was in the neighborhood." He raised a brow. You were in the neighborhood of a rundown hardware store with flickering lights and a squirrel problem? She laughed. Okay, maybe I was hoping to see you again. Zane ran up beside her. Do you want to come to our house? Daddy makes the best grilled cheese. Owen groaned. Zane, she probably doesn't. I'd love to, she cut in. That night, she sat on the floor of their tiny two-bedroom rental, eating grilled cheese off chipped plates and laughing as Zane showed her his dinosaur drawings. Owen leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her. She didn't seem uncomfortable. She didn't flinch when the heater made weird noises or when the lights flickered, or when Zane asked if she had any kids of her own. Nope, she said, stealing a carrot stick. But if I ever do, I hope they're half as cool as you. Zane beamed. Later, when Zane was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Owen walked her to the door. I'm guessing you don't normally hang out in places like this. She shrugged. Maybe I needed a reminder of what actually matters. He looked at her, really looked at her. I still don't get it. Why me? You didn't ask for anything, she said softly. You didn't expect anything. And still, you kept going. He rubbed the back of his neck.
Well,
I've got a little guy counting on me. She smiled. So do I. He frowned. You don't, I mean me, she said quickly. I've got to count on myself. That's what I meant. He nodded slowly, then glanced down. Thanks for coming tonight. You made him really happy. She looked up at him. You made me really happy. Before he could speak, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek just beside the bruise and whispered, See you soon, Owen. Then she was gone. And for the first time in a long time, Owen Maddox had no idea what was coming next. But he knew one thing for sure. The woman who had just walked out his door was not just some grocery line stranger. She was something else entirely. Owen squinted at the half-lit parking lot outside the hardware store as the rain pattered against the windshield of his truck. Zane was curled up in the back seat under a Star Wars blanket, snoring softly, his cheeks flushed with sleep. Owen hadn't moved in 10 minutes. It had been 4 days since Holland showed up at their door, and not a single hour of sleep since had felt normal. He tried to push her out of his mind. Told himself it was just gratitude or curiosity, or maybe the way she'd looked at Zane like he wasn't just another kid with a tired dad and secondhand sneakers. But that wasn't it. The truth was simpler and far more inconvenient. He wanted to see her again, and he had no idea how to make that happen. Back in the apartment, he tucked Zane into bed and sat on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. The silence pressed in around him. Rent was due in 5 days. The hours at the hardware store had been cut again. The fridge was nearly empty. And yet, all he could think about was the way Holland had kissed his cheek like it was something she couldn't stop herself from doing. The next morning, Owen dropped Zane at school and headed to his second job stocking shelves at a discount supply store 2 towns over. The manager, Ed, had a habit of yelling even when he wasn't angry. You're late. I'm 2 minutes early. Late in spirit, Ed muttered, handing him a clipboard. Truck just came in. Aisle 4. Owen dragged himself through the day, trying not to let his mind wander. But around 3 in the afternoon, as he was stacking cases of generic soda, a familiar voice stopped him cold. You always work this hard. Or, is today special? He turned, eyes wide. Holland stood there in a pair of black boots and a soft gray coat, holding a bag of oranges and looking like she belonged anywhere but here. How did you? I asked Zane's teacher what days you pick him up. She mentioned you had another job. I took a guess. You tracked me down again? She held up the oranges. Well, I needed these. And you said you liked citrus. I never said that. You didn't have to. He shook his head, a laugh escaping before he could stop it. What are you doing here, really? She stepped closer. I was hoping you'd take a break. I can't. I already cleared it with Ed. Owen blinked. You what? He said something about you being late in spirit and waved his hand like he was casting a spell. I think you might be in trouble. Owen set down the clipboard and followed her outside, bewildered. She led him to her car's sleek, charcoal gray, and clearly expensive, though he didn't recognize the brand. She opened the passenger door. Where are we going? You'll see. I have to pick up Zane soon. I'll have you back in an hour. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city blurring past in streaks of wet pavement and blinking traffic lights. Finally, she pulled into a quiet street lined with tall brick buildings. She parked in front of a storefront with the windows papered over and a small sign in the corner that said "Coming soon." A bookstore? He asked. Not just any bookstore, she said, unlocking the door with a key from her coat pocket. Inside, the space was still unfinished, bare walls, shelves half installed, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the air. I bought this place a month ago, Holland said, walking across the concrete floor. It was part of an old family estate. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was little. I've been restoring it. Owen ran a hand over one of the wooden shelves. It's beautiful. I want it to be a community space. Reading programs, local author nights. A place kids like Zane can come after school. He looked at her, the air catching in his lungs. You brought me here just to show me this? She shrugged, suddenly shy. I wanted you to know I'm not just someone who shows up once and disappears. I don't expect anything from you. I know, and that's why I'm still here. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The rain tapped gently against the windows, and the air between them thickened with something unspoken. You're not what I expected, Holland. She smiled faintly. Neither are you. He stepped closer. What's the catch? There is none. He searched her face. People like you don't usually end up with people like me. She tilted her head. And what kind of person do you think I am? Someone with options, with power, with freedom. I don't feel very free most of the time. He hesitated. And what kind of person do you think I am? She didn't blink. The kind who makes grilled cheese with real butter, even when he's out of everything else. The kind who teaches his son to say thank you even when he gets nothing in return. The kind who keeps showing up. Owen looked away, throat tight. That's not who I used to be. It's who you are now. When they returned to the school, Holland waited in the car while Owen went inside. Zane came out bouncing, his backpack trailing behind him. Did you see her again? He asked, eyes wide. Yeah, Owen said, trying not to smile. She's waiting outside. Zane took off like a rocket. Owen followed, heart thudding. Hi, Zane shouted, flinging the door open. Did you miss me? Desperately, Holland said, laughing. I brought snacks. She handed him a bag of trail mix, and he climbed into the back seat like he'd done it 100 times before. That night, she stayed for dinner again. This time, Owen made pasta. They ate on the couch, watching a movie Zane had picked. Afterward, Holland helped wash the dishes while Owen dried. Do you ever slow down? He asked. She handed him a plate. Not really. Why? If I stop moving, things catch up with me. He didn't press. Instead, he handed her a clean spoon. You're good with him. I like kids, she said. They're honest. They remind me of what matters. Later, after Zane had fallen asleep with a comic book on his chest, Owen walked her to the door. I still don't understand why you keep showing up. She looked up at him, her voice low. Because I want to. Even if I have nothing to offer? You already have. He leaned in before he could stop himself. Her breath caught. But just as their lips were about to touch, her phone rang. She pulled back quickly, checking the screen. I have to take this. He stepped away, nodding. I'm sorry. It's okay. She hesitated, then slipped outside, her voice already shifting into something clipped and professional as she answered. Owen stood in the doorway, the cold air brushing his skin. wondering how someone could feel so close and so far away all at once. He didn't know what she was running from, but he knew, somehow, it wasn't him. And for the first time in years, that scared him more than anything else. Owen stood outside the apartment building, the evening air brushing cool against his skin as he watched Holland's car disappear down the road. He hadn't moved since she'd left. The kiss that hadn't happened still lingered between them like unfinished music. He didn't know what the call was about, but it had shifted something in her. The warmth in her eyes had shuddered quickly, as if she'd remembered something she didn't want to. Inside, Zane was fast asleep, arms flung out across his little twin bed. Owen tucked the blanket higher around his son's shoulders, then sat at the small kitchen table, the dishes from dinner still drying beside the sink. He pressed his palms against the table and stared at the peeling linoleum floor. He'd been doing everything he could to keep things steady, to shield Zane from the instability that had followed them since Owen's ex-wife walked out 2 years ago. But Holland had unraveled something in him. Not just attraction, though, that was impossible to ignore, but a feeling he hadn't let himself experience in years. The terrifying, magnetic pull of possibility. The next 2 days passed in a blur of overtime shifts and missed calls. He didn't hear from her. He didn't expect to. Then, on Saturday afternoon, Zane came tearing down the hallway with a flyer in his hand.
Daddy.
Look what Miss Jasper gave me at school. It's a drawing contest. Owen took the paper and glanced at it. First prize wins a $100 bookstore voucher? Zane nodded, breathless. Can I do it? Please. You're already halfway there, Owen said, nodding toward the stack of dragon sketches on the table. Zane beamed. Miss Jasper said the bookstore just opened. It's the new one. Owen froze. Where'd she say it was? On Elm. Next to the flower shop with the fish tank in the window. Owen rubbed the back of his neck. Will Holland be there? Zane asked. I don't know, buddy. She said she wanted to see us again. Owen exhaled. Then maybe we should go. That Sunday, they walked into the newly opened Carrington Books on Elm Street. The transformation was astonishing. Warm wood floors, rows of polished shelves, cozy reading nooks lit with soft lamps. A chalkboard near the front displayed the day's events in looping cursive. Children's art showcase today only. Zane ran ahead, already digging in his backpack for his drawing. Owen followed, scanning the space. He spotted her near the back, speaking with a woman holding a clipboard. Holland's posture was different here, relaxed, but still in control. She wore a cream-colored blouse and slim black slacks, her hair swept up loosely. She looked like someone who belonged in a world far more polished than anything he'd ever known. But when she turned and saw him, her expression softened instantly. I was hoping you'd come. Zane bounded up beside her. I brought my dragon. She crouched down, admiring the drawing he held out. Is this fire-breathing or ice? Both, Zane said proudly. It's a hybrid. Obviously, she said with a grin. Owen stood a few feet back, watching them. Finally, she straightened. I'm glad you're here. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to be. I was waiting to see if you'd choose to come. He crossed his arms. You never said what that phone call was about. The one that pulled you away. Her smile faded. I had to deal with something at the company. A board member tried to push through a partnership I never agreed to. I needed to shut it down before it went public. You're the one in charge. Why would they go behind your back? Because Carrington Global has a lot of old blood in it. Some of them still think I'm just a placeholder until they can correct my father's mistake. Owen raised a brow. And what mistake was that? Leaving the company to me. He stared at her. You own Carrington Global? She nodded once. Owen let out a low breath. You really don't do anything small, do you? No, she said quietly. I don't.
He rubbed his jaw.
I don't get it. What would someone like you possibly want with someone like me? Someone like you? She echoed, stepping closer. You mean someone who works 2 jobs, raises a son on his own, and still finds time to make the world feel safe for him? He avoided her eyes. That's not enough. It is to me, she said, and there was no hesitation in her voice. Zane was already at the activity table, surrounded by crayons and other kids. Holland glanced at him, then back at Owen. I've been thinking, she said, lowering her voice, about something more permanent for the store. A program for single parents. Maybe job training, resume help, childcare during workshops. I've got the space upstairs to host it. He gave a skeptical laugh. You want to do all that because of me? I want to do it because I should have done it a long time ago. Meeting you just reminded me how much I've been ignoring what matters. I don't want to be your charity case, Holland. And you're not, she said firmly. But maybe I needed to meet someone who couldn't be bought. Someone who made me remember what it feels like to show up because it matters. He looked at her, his voice quiet. I don't know if I can fit into your world. Then maybe I'll make a new one, she said, where we both belong. Before he could respond, Zane ran up, waving a piece of paper. They said my drawing might win. They're putting it on the wall. That's amazing, Holland said, crouching again. I'm proud of you. Zane threw his arms around her neck, and she held him tightly. Later, as the event wound down, Holland invited them upstairs to the loft space above the store. It was sunlit and airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline in the distance. A few boxes were stacked near the back, filled with books yet to be shelved. I was thinking of turning this into a reading lounge, she said. But maybe it could be something more. Owen walked to the window, looking out. You've got a view of everything from here. And yet, she said softly, it still feels empty when I'm alone. He turned to face her. I don't want to be alone anymore, she said. And I don't want to keep pretending I'm okay with the kind of life that looks good on paper, but feels hollow in reality. He stepped closer. I don't have much to offer except the truth. Then give me that. He searched her face. I don't know how to be with someone who doesn't need me. I don't need you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I want you. And that feels more honest than anything I've said in a long time. Owen hesitated, then reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He laced their fingers together, grounding himself in the warmth of her skin. A long beat passed before he spoke again. Zane's never had someone stick around. Not really. Then maybe it's time he did. And just like that, the space between them shifted less like a rift, more like a bridge finally built. They stood there, two people from entirely different worlds, finding steady ground not in what they had, but in what they chose. Each other. Neither of them said anything more. They didn't need to. Zane was bouncing on the couch with his dinosaur slippers while Owen stood at the kitchen counter, staring blankly at a bowl of pancake batter. It was a Sunday morning, and the sun was pouring through the window with the kind of warmth that made the apartment feel less like a box and more like a home. Holland was late, which wasn't like her. She said 9, Zane said, flipping through the comic book she'd brought him from Carrington Books. Maybe she forgot. Owen wiped his hands on a dish towel and checked the time again. She didn't forget. He picked up his phone and hesitated before calling. After what they'd shared in the loft upstairs, what they'd both admitted, he hadn't expected silence. Not from her.
Not now.
But the phone didn't even ring. Straight to voicemail. Zane looked up. Is she still coming? I'm not sure. He didn't say more, but something in his chest twisted. He wasn't used to being wanted, and lately, he'd let himself believe that maybe this time would be different. That someone like Holland wasn't just passing through. When the knock finally came, it was nearly noon. Zane jumped up and ran to the door. Holland. But it wasn't her. A man in a dark blazer stood on the doorstep, holding a thin envelope. His expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. Is this the Maddox residence? He asked, eyes flicking to Owen. Yeah, Owen said slowly, stepping forward. Who are you? I represent Carrington Global. I was asked to deliver this by hand. He handed Owen the envelope and turned without another word, disappearing down the stairs. Owen stared at the thick paper. He recognized the crest embossed on the flap, a minimalist gold C. He tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A typed message. No greeting. No closing. Effective immediately, Holland Carrington has stepped down as CEO of Carrington Global. All public appearances and communications have been suspended until further notice. Owen read it again. Then again. What is it?
Zane asked.
He folded the page and set it on the counter. Nothing you need to worry about. But his mind was racing. Holland wasn't the kind of woman to vanish. Not unless something had gone very, very wrong. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch long after Zane had gone to bed, staring at the city lights through the window, replaying every interaction with her, every glance, every word. Something had happened. Something she hadn't told him about. The next morning, he left Zane with his neighbor Mrs. Ellis and took the bus to Carrington Tower. The security guard at the front desk barely looked up. Offices are closed to the public today. I need to see Holland. She's not here. Where is she? The guard raised an eyebrow. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm not leaving until you tell me where she is. A glass door behind the desk opened, and a woman in a gray skirt suit stepped out, her eyes sharp and assessing. Mr. Maddox?
He turned.
Do I know you? I'm Hollis Crane, she said. Special counsel to Carrington Holdings. What happened to Holland? She resigned. I got the letter, but that doesn't mean anything. She didn't send it herself. Hollis hesitated. She's stepping away from the company for the foreseeable future.
Why?
She made some decisions that didn't align with the board's interests. There were concerns. He narrowed his eyes. What kind of concerns? She was reallocating funds, planning to start several nonprofit initiatives under the Carrington umbrella. Some of the more traditional board members saw it as a misuse of resources. She was helping people. She was disrupting the structure. Owen's voice hardened. Are you people seriously punishing her for trying to do something decent? She chose to step back before a vote could be called. Where is she now? I'm afraid I can't disclose that. Then I'm not leaving. Hollis studied him, then sighed. She's at her family estate in Westridge. That's all I can say. He turned on his heel and walked out without another word. Westridge was 2 hours outside the city, tucked into the hills where the air turned quiet and the roads narrowed between towering oaks. He borrowed his neighbor's beat-up sedan, filled the tank with the last of his savings, and drove like the answers were waiting at the end of the road. The Carrington estate was impossible to miss. A wrought iron gate stretched across the front, and behind it, a long gravel driveway wound through manicured grounds toward a stone mansion that looked more like a private museum than a home. He buzzed the gate. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. He stepped back, about to call her name, when he heard the low hum of the gate creaking open. Slowly, it swung inward. He walked. The air was clean and heavy with the scent of pine. The house loomed larger with each step, its windows shuttered, the front door closed. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. The door opened a few seconds later. Holland stood barefoot on the marble floor, wearing a simple gray sweater and loose pants. Her hair was down, unbrushed. She didn't look like herself. But her eyes, they were the same. Haunted.
Fierce.
And aching. I didn't know if you'd come, she said. You disappeared. I didn't know how to tell you. Tell me now. She stepped aside. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No staff, no movement. Just the echo of their footsteps on the stone floor. They gave me a choice, she said. Let them dismantle everything I'd built or walk away with the last of my dignity intact. You gave up your company? His voice cracked. I gave up the version of it I couldn't live with anymore. He turned to her. Why didn't you call me? Because I was ashamed. I thought if I lost everything, you'd see me differently. I never cared about any of that. I know that now. He stared at her. So, what happens next? She stepped forward. That depends on whether you can forgive me for running. I'm not mad you ran, he said. I'm mad you didn't take me with you. She reached for his hand, and he let her take it. I don't know what the future looks like, she said. But I know I want you in it. You and Zane. You sure you're ready for all that? I'm ready to build something real. Something that doesn't need board approval. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like he never wanted to let go. Later, they sat on the back terrace as the sun dipped behind the hills. She rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he breathed without weight on his chest.
I've been thinking, she said.
That space above the bookstore? What if we made it a Real Foundation? For single parents. Scholarships, housing support, job placement. We could run it together. He turned to her. You said you didn't have much to offer. But you have everything I need. He kissed her. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just right. And when they pulled apart, he smiled. I guess this means I'm staying for dinner? You're staying for everything, she said softly. If you want to.
Ido.
1 week later, Carrington Books unveiled its new second floor, the Maddox Family Resource Center. Holland spoke at the ribbon cutting, with Zane holding the scissors and Owen standing proudly beside her. The crowd clapped. The cameras flashed. But none of that mattered as much as the way she looked at him afterward, like he wasn't just part of her life now.
He was her life.
And this time, neither of them was running. The grand opening of the Maddox Family Resource Center was barely a week behind them, and already the second floor of Carrington Books had transformed into something electric. The air buzzed with purpose young parents attending Resume workshops, toddlers stacking wooden blocks in the sunlit playroom, volunteers reading aloud from picture books in cozy corners. And in the center of it all, Owen stood beside Holland, as if he'd always been meant to. But even in the whirlwind of activity, something in Owen's chest hadn't quite settled. Not doubt, no, that part was long gone, but wonder. Not at her wealth or her world, but at how seamlessly she'd chosen to share it. They were sitting in what used to be the upper loft, now turned into a lounge for parents who needed a quiet place to breathe. The walls were a deep moss green, the shelves lined with poetry and parenting books. Holland sat cross-legged on the couch, barefoot, her laptop open beside her but untouched. You haven't looked at that screen in 10 minutes, Owen said, sipping coffee from a ceramic mug hand painted by one of the volunteers. I've had enough meetings to last a lifetime, she said, glancing toward the glass balcony that overlooked the bookstore below. Besides, I like this better. The quiet.
No.
You. He felt the warmth rise in his chest, quiet but strong. I talked to my lawyer this morning, she said, her voice softer now. I've officially signed over my voting shares in Carrington Global. He blinked. That's your legacy.
No, she said.
That was someone else's dream. I don't need to control a Fortune 500 company to feel powerful. Not when I'm doing something that actually changes things. And you're sure you're okay walking away from all that? I'm not walking away, she said, reaching for his hand. I'm finally walking toward something. Owen nodded slowly. I used to think that love was this
distant thing.
Something for people who had their lives together. I didn't think I'd get a second shot. You didn't get a second shot, she said. You made one. Just then, Zane burst into the room carrying a crumpled envelope and a grin that nearly split his face in two. Daddy.
Holland.
Guess what? My dragon drawing won the contest. Owen stood. Wait, the art contest. Zane nodded, so hard his curls bounced. They're putting it in the window with a frame and everything. And they gave me $100 gift card. Holland reached for the envelope and read through the letter. They're also inviting you to a young illustrators showcase in the city next month. Zane's eyes widened. Is that like a fancy art thing?
Very fancy, she said.
You'll need a tie.
He groaned.
Can it be a superhero tie? I wouldn't have it any other way. Later that night, after Zane had fallen asleep humming a made-up song about dragons and bookstores, Owen walked Holland to her car. The air was cool, and the city had gone hushed in that lull between late night and dawn. I can't believe how fast everything's changed, he said as they stood near the curb. She leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. It didn't change. It just finally started moving in the right direction. He looked down at her. I've been thinking about something. Should I be nervous? He laughed under his breath. Maybe. She tilted her face toward him, waiting. I want to build something with you, he said. Not just the center. A life. A home. Her breath hitched slightly. I know we come from different worlds, he continued. But when I'm with you, none of that matters. You make things feel possible again. She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers. What are you saying, Owen? He pulled something from his coat pocket. A small velvet box, worn at the corners. I didn't go to a jewelry store.
I didn't have to, he said.
This was my mother's. She wore it until the day she passed. She used to say love doesn't need to be new to be real, it just needs to be true. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold ring, simple and timeless, with a single oval sapphire set in the center. Holland's breath caught. I'm not rich. I'm not perfect. But I know how to love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to do it better. Will you marry me, Holland Carrington? Tears shimmered in her eyes. She didn't speak at first, just nodded, once, twice, then threw her arms around his neck and kissed him like everything in the world made sense. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, Owen, yes. The weeks that followed unfolded like a dream built on foundations they'd both earned. They didn't plan a lavish wedding. Holland didn't want one. Instead, they married in the garden behind the bookstore with fairy lights strung from the trees and Zane walking her down the aisle, beaming in a superhero tie. Hollis came, surprisingly. She handed Holland a card and whispered, You made the right choice. Holland squeezed her hand in reply. Owen wore a suit borrowed from a friend, and Holland wore a dress passed down from her grandmother, altered to fit her modern, elegant frame. She walked barefoot across the grass, her bouquet hand-picked from the flower shop next door. They exchanged vows under a wooden arch built by Owen and his co-workers from the hardware store. He spoke of second chances and real love. She spoke of choosing him every day from now until forever. When they kissed, the crowd cheered and Zane shouted, Can we eat cake now? Carrington Books stayed open that day, but only for guests. Children ran through the aisles with streamers, and Holland's assistant set up a reading tent where kids curled up on beanbags and listened to stories. Owen surprised her with a song he'd written on the old guitar he used to play in college. It wasn't polished, but it was real. She cried through every verse. They danced barefoot on the patio behind the store, surrounded by lanterns and laughter and the kind of joy that didn't need explanation. As the night wore on, Holland pulled Owen into the quiet of the upstairs lounge. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't paid for your groceries that day? She asked, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. He smiled. Sometimes. But it doesn't matter. Because we still would have found each other. How do you know? Because I would have noticed you in every room I ever walked into. Sooner or later, I would have found a way to say hello. She rested her forehead against his. I'm glad it was sooner. He kissed her then, slow and deep, as if they had forever. And they did. Months passed, and the resource center expanded across 2 more floors, funded by private donors who believed in Holland's vision. Owen took over as program director, balancing logistics and curriculum while still making time to coach Zane's soccer team on weekends. Zane's art was published in a children's magazine, and he was already working on a comic book series featuring a dragon who ran a bookstore. Holland started writing again, something she hadn't done since college. Her essays on love, purpose, and reinvention were picked up by national publications. She didn't miss the boardroom, not even a little. They bought a little house just outside the city. Nothing extravagant. Just a white cottage with blue shutters and a porch swing where they drank coffee every morning before the world woke up. They planted a garden in the spring and taught Zane how to grow tomatoes. Sometimes, Owen would find her standing at the back fence, watching the sun dip behind the hills. "What are you thinking?" he'd ask.
And she'd always say the same thing.
"That I never knew I could be this happy." And he'd wrap his arms around her from behind, rest his chin on her shoulder, and whisper, "Me neither." Because in the end, it didn't matter how it started. All that mattered was how they chose each other. Every single day. For the rest of their lives.